As you know, this is our monthly speaker series. This is the first one of this year, and we are so excited. It is Kerri Wise, our Chief Marketing Officer of AutoFi, and also the president of WOCAN. So I'm going to go through a little bit about WOCAN. For those of you that are new, it's your very first time at the event. What we did with WOCAN, why we started, we're Women of Color Automotive Network. It's a membership-based nonprofit. We do our monthly speaker series. We have educational workshops. We do member meetups. We have a private Facebook group. If you're not a part of our private Facebook group, you can join that, where we have conversations with our tribe. We offer scholarships. So if you are not a member right now, please join us at WOCAutonetwork.com. There's a little button at the top that says become a member. We also have our ally program. So if you're not a woman of color, you can become an ally. We have a new ally chair that we just had joined. So we're going to have so many great things coming up, and you'll find out more about our organization. We want to thank our sponsors. Our gold level sponsors, Subaru, they have just done an amazing job, came on for another year. Dr. Monica is here. She's always celebrating. She brings her crew. She brings the energy. We did an amazing coffee talk last year that just was so powerful. We're still getting emails and messages about the coffee talk. It was just an amazing experience. We're thankful for Subaru, for our AFCO Holdings, which is our silver level sponsor. They just recently came on board. And then we have Car Global at our bronze level, and just the many partners and allies who've just been friends of WOCAN, who've just done a great job supporting and contributing to us. So we're very thankful for all the sponsors. And we have our founders. 4 of us came together in August of last year, and we did it to become Women of Color Automotive Network. It's the 4 of us: Patrice Banks, which is the CEO of Girls Auto Clinic, Amanda Gordon, CEO of Gojo, myself, sales manager at Volkswagen of Marion, and Kerri Wise, our president, the chief marketing officer of AutoFi. Patrice has the Girls Auto Clinic, which is a female all-car garage with women who are the technicians. You can also get your hair done and nails done at her shop. And then Amanda, which is the CEO of Gojo, and it is the first African-American woman in the state of Colorado to have her own dealership, doing an amazing job out there. I am one of Automotive News 40 Under 40. I'm a sales manager at Volkswagen of Marion in Southern Illinois. I recently relocated about 6 months ago. And Kerri Wise, which is going to tell her story today. But if I just say a few things about her, 23 years in the automotive industry, in 2 male-dominated industries. She's part of the 4% of African-American women that are in the C-suite as a chief marketing officer. She's also Automotive News top 100 leading women, and just someone that I consider a very dear friend. So we're going to talk more about her shortly. But I also want to introduce, this is brand new. You guys have never seen this slide before. This is our Executive Advisory Council. It means that WOCAN is growing. So you're seeing new faces because we are getting bigger. We're going to need more help when we start putting together these events that are going to be happening real soon. We needed people to help us, and we have some amazing, amazing talent. Sandy Zanino, who's the CEO of an Innovative Auto HR. She is our ally chair. You see her at every event. We talk about her because she is invited to the cookout. So Sandy is just an amazing person, and we rely on her a lot. And we're so excited about the ally program. You should start seeing those ally emails. If you're not, make sure that you join the membership for ally group so you can be on that committee. Then we have Ashley Cavahos. Ashley is the director of digital performance with Walzer Automotive Group. She is our membership chair. She is new. We just announced her last month. We're so excited. She was at NADA with us, and it's just been such a huge part of our team, and we're so excited to bring her on. And then we have 2 new faces that I am so excited about. This has not been announced on social media at all, so this is the first time for all of you that are here today to see these 2 new faces, which is Subi Gosh. She is the Executive Vice President of Partnerships and Marketing for Stream Companies. She will be joining us as the Partnerships Chair. So we're so excited to have Subi. She is not a new face in automotive. I'm sure you have heard of her and seen her. She is just full of passion and life and energy and so many relationships. So we know this is going to be a perfect fit for her. And last, but certainly not least, is Lou Mcquilkin, who is the head of events at JD Powers. She is brand new, and we are inviting her to our events chair. So as I talked about, when I know someone who knows how to do events, it's Lou. So she's going to make our events big and bad and just memorable. So guys, we have an amazing, amazing team. We grew from 4 to 8 and things are just going to get bigger. And we need all of you. Those of you that are on this call, if you're looking for a place to join us, we're going to need your volunteers. I see some hands raising and some claps. We need all of you because it's going to make WOCAN even bigger and even better. Exciting! WOCAN in the news, NADA. This was in Las Vegas. And when I say we had a good time, this is the first time that all 4 of us, the 4 WOCAN founders, plus our executive council got together in one place. Because as you know, we have LA, Denver, Patrice is up there in Philadelphia, I'm in Southern Illinois. We're in 4 different entirely places on the continent. And here we are, we're able to come together in one place in Las Vegas and be able to be together, take pictures, support Kerri. She did an amazing job. She was a speaker at NADA. I had a session at NADA. We had the Automotive News Retail Forum. We met so many of you for the very first time at this event and put faces to names and voices. And it was just a tribe and it was a partnership. Ashley and Sandy were there with us and we took some special photos because we have some big news coming out in a few months that we can't yet share and talk about, but it's going to be big. So we were all there just supporting each other. We also got the AWA Award, the Lighthouse Award. It's the first time that WOCAN has ever gotten an award together. So this was absolutely amazing and I'm just super proud.
Well, and Erica killed it. I know I'm supposed to wait for you to introduce me, but Erica just killed it on the Automotive News Retail Forum stage. I don't know if you know, but that's big time. Like you can't apply to get on that stage. So to see her on that stage was, we were honored and we were proud.
Well, thank you so much, Kerri. Just thank you. It was an honor and I was very proud to be there. I was glad for the first time to be in an event where I looked out in the audience and I saw my sisters there. I saw Kerri and I saw Amanda and they were screaming for, you know how we act. We act a fool when our girlfriends win. It was quiet when everybody else went up for their award. And when I went up, they were like, oh my God, screaming. So that warmed my heart and it meant a lot to me to look out and see them there supporting me. So thank you both. So this is the part where we introduce Kerri Wise, Chief Marketing Officer of AutoFi. Again, the very first Black woman that I even know as chief. I say this and I say it with a big heart when I say Kerri climbed through windows so that the rest of us could walk through doors. And I say that because she's been in this industry for over 20 years. She literally told me this is my 20th NADA. Like that blew my mind. It was the first time that I had been to that event, and yet it was her 20th time. So she is a trailblazer. She is a pioneer. You know, I feel like I'm just walking in her footsteps that she already created. And while it sometimes feels easier to navigate that, it's only because we had trailblazers like her who stood their ground, who made it look easy, that were the only one in the room so many times. And now she gets to share her incredible story. So I am so honored, so delighted to introduce you to Kerri Wise, Chief Marketing Officer at AutoFi, and our illustrious president. Kerri, welcome, and we are proud and glad to have you.
Thank you, Erica, so much. It's so hard to follow Erica because she's so eloquent in everything she says, including an introduction. And hearing her say that, it feels so strange for me. I'm someone who doesn't really take myself that seriously. And the first time she ever said, well, I've never seen a Black woman speak at an automotive conference, it never even occurred to me that someone would be looking up to me in that way. And so I appreciate that. And it means a lot to me. It means a lot to me to inspire just one person. So I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to embrace that my position in the automotive industry and the fact that I am blazing some new trails as what I call the only one. And the only one, you know, now that I have Erica and others coming, I probably won't be the only one. The idea wouldn't be the only one, but for a while, I would be in a room where I would be the only person that looks like me. And so, you know, that's why we created WOCAN. And today I want to tell my story. I don't talk about myself very personally. And so this is something new for me. Erica can attest that I pushed this off for a long time because I'd much rather talk about best practices or trends in the automotive industry than to talk about myself. But I'm glad that I'm here, and I hope that you can gather something from my story that might inspire you in your journey. I've had an amazing career in automotive. I love this industry. And like many of you, I fell into it. I had no purpose or no idea of the automotive industry as a career path when I went to high school, when I went to college. But I landed in the industry starting at JD Power, and we called it JD Power and Associates at the time. We were all associates under Dave Power, who is James David Power. I worked under JD Power himself, who was still there. We were a family business. I moved on to Edmunds, then TrueCar, and now AutoFi, and have just enjoyed my career. I've worked with an amazing set of people. I love what I do, but I've also had some challenges and I've had some hurdles. And my hope for this presentation isn't to just talk about the good, right? I don't want you to leave this presentation saying, wow, she just had this perfect life or career. I really want to dig into the hurdles as well, because I think that's the most important thing. But let's start with where it all started. And this is probably 3 or 4-year-old Kerri Reese at the time. And I love this picture because to me, I look confident. And, I have a muscle shirt on, it looks like, right? I'm showing my muscles. And I think it captures who I was as a kid. I was somebody who, was a tomboy, right? And I liked doing everything, getting into everything, whether it be sports or whether it be, I was a baton twirler. I like to sing. I like to dance. I got into everything. And so, I think a lot of that has to do with how I was raised. And so I want to talk about that because before I jump into my childhood, I want to take a step back. And it started before me. And I talk a lot about my ancestors, right? And how they impacted me. When we think of ancestors, we might think of the 1700s or the 1800s. And many times we don't know our ancestors, but for me, my history is so rich. And it's something that my family has always shared stories about. And I talk a lot about my great-grandfather, Harrison Reese, who was born a slave. And, we think about slavery as so far away, but to me, it's very close, right? He was my father's grandfather. My father lived with him until he was 15 years old. And so, it's very close, and it's a reminder of how far we have come as Black people, and the responsibility I have to carry it on, right? Because my ancestors did not have that opportunity. I think about my grandmother, who I speak a lot about, my maternal grandmother, Cleola Jackson, and she was a lot like the movie The Help. Has anybody seen the movie The Help? I'm not seeing your faces right now, but many of you have seen the movie Help, where she was a maid and she was a nanny, and she left her own family as a Black woman to take care of the rich family across town. And that was my grandmother. She had 6 kids of her own, but she took care of other white families that were wealthy across town in Louisiana. And so I think about her, and I think about her sacrifice and the era that she was in as a woman in the Deep South, born in the 20s, the lack of opportunity she had to even finish high school. And to me, it is a huge responsibility. And so this is why history is important, because to me, it's more than just stories. These are the people that I know and the inspiration that I have. My parents were fled. I say fled, they wouldn't say that, but they left the South in the 60s. You saw a lot of Black people leaving the South to get away, to go to the North, to go West, to places that they had opportunity. If you look along the right side there, that's my dad's elementary school. And they were from a little town called Sunshine, Louisiana. Iberville, Louisiana is another town, or it's also referred as outside of Baton Rouge. But you can see that my family came from nothing, and they made something to give me an opportunity. I'm first generation freedom, because they left the South in the 60s. They made it to California, both of them separately, and then met each other and ran into each other, even though they grew up their whole entire lives together. And so I'm so thankful that they made it to California, because I don't know what I would be. I don't know if I would have gotten the education, the opportunity that I received in California if they didn't take those risks to make it out here. And they didn't finished college. They just finished high school, but they set a bar really high for me and my siblings. And so I also have to acknowledge my siblings because I'm one of three. I'm the third. I am the people pleaser, the middle child that tries to make everybody happy. But my siblings set a really high bar for me. My sister is 10 years older than me. She went off to college when I was 8 years old. I take for granted the impact of seeing a woman like her at 18 go off to college, right? And study engineering, studying in a male dominated industry. And so for me, my gender, I was oblivious to certain industries not being for women. I was oblivious really to my race at that time because I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area where I was around so many different people. And so my brothers, right, they were a huge part of it. My brother, the one on the right is my little brother. He played at UCLA football. They were both linebackers. He played in the Chicago Bears. My older brother on the left side played for the Wisconsin Badgers. And so I had athletes in the family and they wrestled with me and they treated me the same. And my dad did the same thing. He treated us all the same. We fished, we did everything the same. And so I think that was a gift to me. And I think about the fact that my family prepared me for the automotive industry, prepared me for a male dominated industry. And in some ways, helped me to have the courage to kind of navigate through an industry where people don't look like me. So I want to move on to me when I grew up a little bit, right? And I got into high school and I was a 3-sport athlete from 7th grade to 12th grade. And you'll see that a lot with women who are in male dominated industries, right? A lot of them come from sports and the military. And I was the same way because it gives you that competitiveness, right? You're used to having to compete, to want to win. You're used to having to work hard, constantly work in teams. And so I played basketball and volleyball and I played softball. And then I went on to play D1 basketball. You can only play one sport in college. It's hard to play 3, but sports were my life. And I credit them to my career really, and the competitiveness and drive I have. So let's talk about the start of my career. I was at Cal State Northridge. I went to junior college first, and then I transferred into Cal State Northridge. And I wouldn't say that I was incredibly ambitious, right? In high school, I got a 3.0. I was like a B student, but it wasn't like people might think of me now necessarily. I just was like, okay, I'm an okay student. I'm doing okay. I went to Cal State Northridge. It's not a big name college or anything like that, but I had a lucky break in that JD Power, who you're seeing in the picture with me, this is JD Power III. We called him Dave. His company was close to my college. And so he served as an adjunct professor in the graduate business program. And I was in the undergrad business program studying marketing. And so what I knew from other students was if you wanted to land an internship, a good route was JD Power because of his connection to the university. And I ran out of internships. I couldn't find one. And I said, you know what? I'll just apply at JD Power 6 months before I graduated. And I was a marketing research intern on the Honda sales and service tracking study. And that is exactly how I got into automotive. Had no plans. In fact, marketing research wasn't that sexy to me. I thought of advertising and I thought of all these careers that I saw on TV and not necessarily using my marketing degree for marketing research. But here I am at JD Power. I checked data. It wasn't a glamorous job, but the day I graduated, 2 days later, I had a full-time job at JD Power and Associates, and I was able to start my career. And I started on that Honda account, working directly with Honda on their sales and service marketing research and insight. So it was a great start to my career. I credit JD Power for a lot of the skill sets I have because I am a left and a right brain. I'm not a traditional marketer. I'm very analytical too. And when you look at marketing research, it's the best of both worlds. You can take those insights and tell stories with them and help clients improve their experience. And that's exactly what I did. I was a researcher for a number of years. They let me move into consulting where I was able to work with dealers more closely in store, using the insights, using mystery shops to help them improve their experiences. I worked with the OEMs, every OEM you can think of. And so it was such a great launched to my career. I also moved into sales, something I was really uncomfortable with, but I worked in sales for 2 years. And so they let me move where I wanted. There were allies that were really important to me, mostly men that managed me, that really guided me. And I was there for 12 whole years, my first 12 years of my career. And I got to admit, I was there too long. That was the only negative, that it was such a warm and fuzzy place for me that I couldn't see myself ever leaving. And so what I would say is to challenge yourself, that when things are safe, or just because you're comfortable, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be open to new opportunities. I probably should have left after 8 years, and I stayed for 12. And every time I thought about leaving, I had a new excuse. Like I had a baby, and I was like, well, I can't leave with a baby because, I might go somewhere else and they won't give me the flexibility. Then I stayed for a couple more years and I had another baby, right? And so I always had these excuses. But finally, I got to a point when had my second baby, I was on maternity leave, and I was like, I got to look for another job. I got to look for something else. And this is now 2010 or so, right? The internet has come out. I went from doing marketing research where we measured usage of newspapers now to usage of the internet. And the internet was hot, and I wanted to get into tech. But the problem is I had 12 years of working at JD Power, and people weren't hiring me. They would not look at me because I didn't have the skills. So I applied for a director of client insights at Edmunds.com. I didn't have any background in web analytics, but I sold myself. And I sold the transferable skills, and I read books. I remember buying a book on web analytics and hurrying up and reading as much as I could so that I could sound like I knew what I was talking about. And guess what? They hired me. And I started at Edmunds. It was my first break into tech, right? So I had automotive and I had tech. For those who aren't familiar, Edmunds is a car research site. And so we launched the dealer business. They had never sold to dealers. The people on the left are like family to me. This was the original team that launched the dealer business when I joined in 2011. So 12 years into my career. I had such an amazing experience at Edmunds. Now, I want to just say this is not my whole career of amazing experiences and people. We're going to get to that in a second and the challenges. But my first two companies, I had a lot of support. And they were like family. The hard part at Edmunds is now I had two kids. That's me on the right. And that's about the time I was at Edmunds. I joined Edmunds after having a 3-year-old and a 10-month-old. And I remember being freaked out, like, I'm joining a company with a 10-month-old. I'm going to have to leave early, all of that. It's not going to be like it was at JD Power. And guess what? I had more flexibility at Edmunds than I ever did at JD Power. And so one thing I will just challenge you on, even mothers out there, that sometimes we hold off on our career because we're like, well, we have our little kids and we're not going to have like, you never know, you might leave somewhere better and you actually have the flexibility. And I'll also say that I was a director at this time. See, I was the boss. It's much easier to have work-life balance when you're the boss. Right? So don't be afraid to move up the ladder, even if you have kids, right? Be open to these new opportunities. So I moved on to Edmunds and I was happy as can be. I mean, we were like the Google of the car business. We had a barista, the machine that you can make your own cappuccinos, and we had arcades and free food and a nap room and all this crazy stuff that I had not experienced before going into tech. Why would I ever leave that? I was paid well. I made it up to executive director, which is one level below a VP. But then a new company called me, and they were a company that was on the rise. They were called TrueCar. I knew a lot about TrueCar. They were our competitor. In fact, we were in the same city of Santa Monica. I would not even take their phone call. In fact, they showed up to an NADA Edmunds party just to talk to me. And it was crazy. I was like, I'm not going to go to Edmunds. And the reason why I didn't want to go to Edmunds is because of the articles, to TrueCar, it's because of the articles you see on the right. TrueCar was offering price transparency to consumers. And it was at a time where that was not happening. And they were very aggressive about how they were doing it. And dealers did not like that. And every day you looked in automotive news, you saw dealers versus TrueCar. The saga continues. TrueCar riles up dealers. And so they're calling me and asking me to come over as the VP of dealer relations. hell to the no. I'm not going, because I worked with dealers. I love dealers. At the time, my husband worked in a dealership. Like, I was not going to go over to a company that was hated. And so I said no. I said no for the first month and the second month, and they would call every month, 3 months, 4 months, I'm saying no. And mind you, I didn't even know how they saw me. I spoke at only 2 conferences a year at Edmunds. So they saw me at one conference. I literally was not even out there. I had no brand. Nevertheless, I also knew something positive about TrueCar, that they were catching on with consumers, that they had millions of consumers shopping them, that this is an example of their commercial, their product. I would hear some good things from dealers, right? That their leads closed. And so after about 5 months of saying no, things changed at Edmunds. Some of my favorite people that you saw on that slide left the company, and I decided I had to be open. I had to think about myself. Because once again, as women, a lot of times we cling on to the family and we feel good, and we don't always take the risk because we're not always thinking about ourselves. And I thought, you know what? I can't stay here for my friends. I have to think about myself as well. And so I left Edmunds. I was walked out of Edmunds because TrueCar is a competitor. And the next week I started at TrueCar. And it was a huge risk for me. I was so nervous. What I had going for myself is I was a vice president for the first time. I'm now 15, 16 years into my career, mind you, right? So this is not an overnight success thing, but I'm a VP. And what I didn't know was that they were going to put a press release out and they were going to share it on Automotive News. So here I am. This is the actual article where I am being featured as the executive that's going to help TrueCar turn things around. TrueCar is going to work on their dealer relationship. It freaked me out. This was the first time I was ever featured in Automotive News. For those who aren't familiar, that's our big publication. And the fact that now I'm out in the public, remember, I was only speaking at about 2 conferences a year at Edmunds, and now I'm on Automotive News for the company that might be the most hated company in the industry at the time. And then, as if things could only get better, our company leadership got into a dispute with the largest dealer group in the country. I'm not sharing inside secrets here. This is all Automotive News headlines you're seeing here at the time. So AutoNation was not happy with us, and they canceled all 300 of their dealerships overnight. And it was headline news. AutoNation drops TrueCar. Inside the AutoNation TrueCar divorce. And here I am, the new VP of dealer relations, 2 months in, losing the most important brand on Automotive News. I don't know what I'm going to do. I have no friends in the industry at this time, right? And so I thought I made a mistake. In fact, if I was to be honest with you, I called Edmunds back. I wanted to come back. I wanted my cush job. I wanted my nap room, and I wanted the arcade, right? Like, I wanted that back because I didn't know what I was going to do. Our stock price dropped overnight from $12 to $5. And so I thought I made a huge mistake, and there was no going back. Edmunds wasn't going to take me back. I was stuck. Within a month of this, our CEO moved on from the company. And now I'm really stuck at a company that has no CEO, is publicly traded, stock cuts in half, and we're still hated. And things changed. Things changed within 6 months of joining the company. I think someone might need to, everyone can mute your phones, please. Thank you. All right. So within 6 months of joining the company, things changed for me. And we were able to land a new CEO. His name was Chip Perry, and he was well known and beloved in the industry. And if for those who don't know Chip's background, he was employee #1 for AutoTrader. And that was a big thing. This is in 1998, the very first listing site in the automotive industry took the company from 1 employee to thousands of employees, $1.5 billion in revenue. And so he was a hero for me. I'm 6 months into the company, a new CEO who dealers like. But I still was freaked out because oftentimes when a new CEO who's worked at another company for a long time comes in, guess what happens? He gets rid of all the leadership in place. And so I thought Chip would bring his own people in, and he did bring his own people in, but I was able to somehow prove my worth, and he kept me around, and we started to work on turning things around. And so we started with a campaign we rolled out, and now I've moved into marketing. I'm not only the dealer relations person, but I'm in dealer marketing, and we called it the Dealer Pledge. We took a full page out in automotive news. We did a video campaign, and on the left side you see Chip, and Chip is basically saying there's a new sheriff in town, and I'm going to change the way we do business with dealers. But the gift that he gave me is that we were in a boardroom, and we were discussing this campaign, and he looked across the room. He only knows me for a couple of weeks, and he's like, you know what? I think we need more than me on the video. How about you star with me in this video campaign? And remember, this is not me now that's a little more known. At the time, I was not known. And so I was like, me? Like, you want me in the video? I was a good speaker. I knew I could do it, but I was also had a lot of pressure on me. Like, wow. Okay. So before you know it, every quarter, Chip's in a video, I'm in a video, and we are apologizing to the industry and trying to earn back trust. And we did it within a year of that campaign. We went from 10,000 dealers as a hated company to 13,000 dealers in 1 year, all through that campaign, Chip's presence. It was an amazing experience. And I think Chip shared his stage with me. And I think that's really important, particularly when you think about allyship. It's the ultimate example of being an ally. And then my brand rose, right? And all of a sudden now I am speaking at every single event. I'm now, this is 2016, 2017. So I'm about 17 years into my career, went from not being known. And in 1 year after that pledge, I am everywhere, and I'm on every podcast, and I'm on every stage. And part of that was our strategy, right? We were sponsoring everything. We wanted to speak at everything. We wanted to get the word out about the new TrueCar. And the gift for me is that the company used me as the spokesperson, something that I really had never experienced before. And then there were bigger stages, right? I started to speak internationally. I was invited to my first ever international speaking engagement in Portugal in 2017. This is only 2 years after joining TrueCar. I'm speaking to 700 people, half of which may not even understand what I'm saying. They were literally having to have translation. So it was an amazing experience. And also I began to speak to women's organizations and to women's groups, which I had never thought of myself as, a leader amongst women, right? Or a DEI leader. And so that was also a new experience for me. But with success comes a lot of things that are behind the scenes. And while externally I was representing TrueCar, I was representing a brand, throughout my career, I've also had some challenges. And a lot of times success is like that iceberg. You only see what's above the surface. There's a lot of stuff that's happening underneath, hard work, but more importantly, the struggles and the challenges. And I want to talk a little bit about that. Something I really haven't talked much about because I've represented these companies, and it's sensitive. And I think, but when I think about the challenges I faced in my career, most of them came when I got to a very high level, right? To the vice president level. I got to say that I was, for the most part, shielded. I had a lot of good experiences prior to reaching the leadership level in companies. But when I got to that level, there were definitely some challenges. And one is navigating as the only one. This is an actual conference promotional piece that was put out. I cut the name of the conference out, but this was my world. Hey, this is a little bit like the game Where's Waldo, except it's like, where's Wise? Like, do you see me? Yeah, you see me, because you don't see anybody like me. And even women, but also women of color, like you just did not see me. And this was my world, right? That I was in. It's all I knew. But I gotta say that I don't want to underestimate how isolating and lonely that is. Okay, imagine walking in a room where everybody knows each other and you don't know them. Like you have those same feelings, even when you're the only woman or you're the only Black person, I think when you're in the majority, you can kind of take for granted what it's like to have people around you that look like you, that you relate to. And so it was isolating. And you question yourself sometimes, like, do I belong here? Do I belong on this stage? I think the one thing that you also experience is that you are representing your entire gender, your entire race. And I was always very cognizant of it. I still am. I overdo that, which is like, I have to represent this because I'm interacting with people in many cases that are not interacting with people like me. They're not interacting with me at church. They're not interacting with me in their neighborhood. They don't have, their closest friends don't look like me. And so I literally might be the first Black woman that they've befriended or have talked to. And you feel that. You feel that energy, you know, when you're experiencing that. And I'll give you a couple examples. You know, recently I had an ex-colleague reach out to me to tell me that I had a good command of the English language. Let me just take a breath there. I had a good command of the English language. I didn't even know how to respond. I was born and raised in America where English is our language. Like, it just is a weird compliment. But there is more to it. You know, what I think he was saying, if he was to be real honest, is he's never heard a Black person speak so well, right? His perception of me and my people are different, right? And so he was impressed that I spoke such good English, not Ebonics, right? And so those are the kind of compliments, backhanded compliments that you'll get. Also, there's the woman thing, right? We know as women, no matter what race you are, that you can be looked down upon. You know, I was at a dinner, I'm taking out 15 dealers. I am paying for the dinner because it's hosted by my company. I am the highest ranking person at the table. And I hear my manager, Ruben, sitting next to me, and he's talking to a general manager on the other side of him. And I hear them talking, and the general manager asks Ruben, "Hey, Ruben, I see that your company is keynoting the event tomorrow. What are you speaking about?" So he just assumed that Ruben was the guy, right, that was speaking. He didn't even say who's speaking. He said, "What are you speaking about?" And when Ruben said, no, I'm not speaking. My boss, Kerri, is speaking. He points to me. Now I'm overhearing this whole thing. The GM starts laughing and he goes, "She's your boss? Wait, she's speaking?" Like, he could not believe that I was Ruben's boss. And that happened several times where people assume that Ruben was my manager versus the other way around. But it also tells you what happens when people are interviewing you. What perceptions do they have of you? What about when you're trying to decide between two people and whether they get the job or not, right? And the belief that you have in them. If you have no exposure to people like me, they're gonna take leaps. And so I experienced that, and sometimes it was really apparent to me. But I think the hard thing about being the only one, and not just the only woman, but also the only person of color, is there is no one to talk to at times, right? I can't talk to the men because they're not going to understand necessarily what I'm saying, right? If I say, well, it's because I'm a woman, they're going to try to talk me off of it. But I got to say, even my fellow women, right, would not understand that being a Black woman might be different than the experience of a white woman. And that was very frustrating, even having to explain it to them. The other challenge is being in the boys' club, or not being in the boys' club, I should say. The boys' club is real. It is a society that exists. I am not making this up. And I only felt it at the highest levels. I only felt it when I became a vice president. And I got to tell you, I'm going to sugarcoat this story because I have to, but the boys' club did not want me to be a part of it. And while I may have been known in the industry, and while my brand was rising, I knew that I was being tolerated. And I got to say that I'm over it now, but it took me a while to get over the frustration of being tolerated, and not just being tolerated. I mean, there were times where I felt like I was trying to be managed out. I'll just be honest. I was trying to be managed out, meaning like making my life hell, making it where I'd want to quit. Now, I could have quit. It might have been easier for me, but let's go back to my competitiveness. I just couldn't do it. I deserved to be in the position I was in. I knew I could outwork most of them. I knew that I cared more, I had more passion, and I just wasn't going to let them take me out. And they tried, they tried, they tried. And it was very hard. I can't tell you how many times I've cried on the way home, just trying to navigate, how do I work through this? And there's multiple tactics I took. I got to tell you, I don't have the answer to dealing with the boys club yet, but I'm going to tell you what I did. And there were multiple tactics. Sometimes I try to get one of the guys to break. And there's always one guy that's kind of going along with the boys club, but they don't really want to go along with it. And I would try to get that guy to take him to lunch, warm him up. But the trust wasn't always there. The trust wasn't always there. Even when I would get in with one of those guys, could I really confide with him what's happening to me? No, I didn't feel that way. Then I would try to outcompete them. I'm going to kill it so badly that when they see me on those stages, I'm just smiling at them and they can't touch me. And there was a while where I said, you know what, I'm going to kill it. And you guys are just you can't fire me when I'm killing it. Right. And I ran harder, I ran faster. So I tried all of those things, but ultimately what helped me were a few allies. And I say a few, it wasn't a lot, but there were a few allies. And one of them was a fellow vice president. She was a white woman. And I wish I could say her name. She might be on here. But I was passed up for a promotion. There was a SVP role where someone who was less experienced got the role and became my boss. And I was so tired of fighting the boys club for so long that I didn't even say anything. I just said, whatever, do the reorg, I'll move under that person. I'm still getting paid well. I still have a great brand externally. I still have the title. I don't care. And this white woman who was a fellow VP, 6 months into this reorg, pulled me aside and said, what are you doing? You're so much more talented than your boss. Have you talked to HR? Now, just so you know, I wasn't a gangbanger, but I kind of have a mentality like that, like snitches need stitches, whatever that term is. Like, I don't go to HR, right? Like, and part of it is I never trusted HR. I never trusted that HR would protect me. So I wasn't going to go to HR. I was going to handle it myself. And she was like, you need to go to HR. And what she did was she lent me her privilege. She lent me her privilege because she was in a family of lawyers. She was in a very privileged family. Her dad was a lawyer. Her husband was a lawyer. They were used to fighting for her rights. She was used to men coming to her aid to protect her. And I wasn't used to that, right? And I never thought of going to HR. But guess what? I was embarrassed enough that she was challenging me that I did. And I had a meeting with the head of HR. And before you know it, they reversed it. He was no longer my boss the next day. And it reminded me about speaking up for yourself. And I needed that ally to lend me their privilege because she had a voice that I didn't think I had. But on the same token, on another token, I had an executive that was coming after me. And he had come after me for 4 years because I disagreed with him in a meeting. And I tried all kinds of tactics. I took him to lunch. I tried everything. I ignored him, but he would come after me and it would be subtle, like leaving me out of meetings, as an example, important meetings that I needed to be in. He would talk about me to other executives, particularly new executives that they didn't know me. And now I have to kind of repair my reputation with them. And it was 4 years of that. And once again, an ally came in to save me. In that I had put up with it for 4 years and I'm shining externally. Who cares? I'm just going to ignore him. And an ally saw his bad behavior on a meeting and they went to HR on my behalf. So once again, I didn't want to go to HR. I don't go to HR, but an ally did it for me and he was a white man. And I begged him not to. And guess what? things changed. And so I don't know if it would have been enough for me to speak up. I don't think it would have been enough. In fact, I would have been ostracized by going to HR. I would have been that girl that tells on the boys club. But having others do it for me was a gift, was a gift. And so I'm thankful for that. And I'm a survivor of the boys club. We need some shirts. Survivor of the boys club. I am here still, and I am still on top. So let's move on. Another thing that really impacted me in these same years that I'm talking about was personal loss. And for me, I had never lost anybody that was close to me outside of a grandparent. And the loss of my mom was the biggest loss of my life. It still is. I literally had to prepare to keep myself together as I talk about this, but she was my biggest fan. I would not be here without her. And so her dying of cancer in a short period was the biggest tragedy I've ever experienced, and having to take care of her in her last days, and also maintain my work. I never took any time off, which I don't recommend, but I'm such a workaholic that I leaned into work more, though I was with her to take care of her in her last days. And so, for me, I think losing someone before you expect to lose somebody, is so hurtful, but I also gave me perspective, because this was around the time that all this stuff was happening with the boys club and the executive coming after me. And it kind of reminded me that nothing matters, that like I can speak up against these guys because nothing's worse than losing my mom. Right. And it gave me that perspective and a little courage to live. Right. And so, I'm still grappling with the loss of my mom. But I think it also gave me the perspective, as I mentioned, to realize my power and to use my voice. And I know that sounds crazy. I'm a vice president of a company. I'm 19 years into my experience and into my career, and yet I still have fear of speaking up, right? Of going against the people that are after me. It's crazy. I can't imagine if I was just new in the industry and just starting out. But I know, and I believe in this quote, that speaking up for yourself is the first step in understanding that you don't have to sacrifice yourself for the sake of others. And I was trying to make others feel good. I was trying to make the boys club not come after me. I was trying not to rock the boat. And I thought that could work, and that doesn't work. And I also forgot how powerful I am, right, in those moments. And I think all of us kind of fall into that trap of not realizing our power. I was beloved in the industry, and yet still fearful to take a stand. Another part of realizing my power and using my voice is that I ultimately joined AutoFi, and that was only a year ago. And I didn't have to. I had a good job where I was, right? I was paid well. I was doing some amazing things, but I saw an opportunity. And for me, I love helping a company grow. I don't want to join a company that is already huge and has already achieved a bunch of things. And AutoFi gave me that opportunity. But more importantly, when I met with their leadership, I knew it was different. I knew that they valued me like I had never felt before. I knew that they wanted to hear my voice. In fact, 2 weeks into joining AutoFi, I got feedback from one of our leaders that they loved me, that I was, going to make a big difference in the company. And the only negative feedback they had for me is that I needed to speak up more in leadership meetings. And I needed to argue and dissent and jump in the ring more. And it was funny to hear that. I've never had feedback that I needed to hear your voice. This is the kid that she talks too much on every report card throughout her life. But I had silenced my voice in order to navigate my career prior to this. I had held my opinions. I was sometimes worried about arguing or disagreeing after having that executive come after me, right? And so it was weird to have someone say, no, we want you. We want to hear your voice. And within 7 months, they promoted me to chief marketing officer. And so I found not only my voice, my power, but I found my people, because it was the first promotion in my entire career that I did not beg, cheat, lie, or steal for. I didn't demand, I didn't threaten to quit. And it was the biggest promotion of my career in reaching the C-suite, something that only 4% of women of color ever, or I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. The C-suite's only represented by 4% are women of color. And so it's amazing that the biggest promotion of your career is one that they just recognize your qualifications and input. And it was refreshing. Now, if I think about realizing my power using my voice, another thing happened in 2020, and we all experienced this. A lot of people talk about George Floyd, but for me, there were so many more cases prior to 2020 that made me upset, where Black people were killed in a way that I did not think was just. But Ahmaud Arbery, before George Floyd, is the one that really riled me up. I am not one to post on these things because I represent companies. You'll see I tend to stay fairly neutral, but I could not stay quiet when I saw the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. And the same thing with George Floyd. It just was so upsetting. And it's something that, once again, was not new to me. But for the first time, I'm going to work, and my colleagues, my white colleagues, are now talking about the George Floyd case in the same way that I was talking about the other cases, right? They are just as upset. I'm not having to explain to them why this happened or how this, like, they got it because they saw it for the first time. And so now it put me in a position where I could talk about these things. You know, gender was a little easier to talk about in these settings, but when you talk about race, people get really uncomfortable. And for me, as someone who's trying to navigate in these spaces where I'm the only one, you don't want to necessarily be that person that is, as they might say, waving the race card, right? And so it was freeing when George Floyd happened, because we were able to have these conversations in the workplaces, and we were able to share other experiences that happened before this. And Amanda, who I had known and I had met at a conference at Driving Sales, we had talked a lot, and had gained, you know, our friendship had grown. We were just talking about it. She has a Black son, and we were just frustrated, like, what can we do? You know, what can we do to make a difference? And then Amanda knew Patrice, and I knew Patrice, or I met her at least one time. And then she joined the conversation. Then Patrice brought Eric in the conversation, and we're literally talking, 4 Black women in automotive, like, what can we do? And the idea of how do we affect our own community, our own industry came up. And one of the things that we saw that was a gap was that women's organizations, while they had the best intentions, a lot of times did not exactly represent the population. A lot of times we would still be the only ones, maybe the only Black woman or one of the few at women's organizations. And likewise, minority organizations, you would have a lot of Black and Latino and Asian dealers, as an example, but you might not have many women. And women of color kind of fall through the cracks in many diversity programs. And we thought of Women of Color Automotive Network. And this was our launch video. I don't know if any of you remember seeing it, but we were literally at home. We filmed it ourselves, and we put it together. We're like, we're going to launch this thing. We're going to plan this thing out for 1 month, and we're going to launch it because we need this now. And we need it. We didn't need it just to make the industry better. Guess who we needed it for? We needed it for ourselves. We needed it for ourselves because we wish that this organization existed 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when we started our career, because we thought we were the only one. We thought there'd be about 10 members, if we were to be honest. That was part of our plan. 10 members would join. There's only 10 Black, Latina, Asian people and Native American in the whole industry, because that's all we were exposed to. But guess what? There were more of you, right? And there 30 of you joined our first meeting, and then we saw 50 and 60, and before you know it, we had 500 members joining Women of Color Automotive Network. We could not believe it. We did not know it exists. And guess what? Of that 500, 100 of you were men and white women. We could not believe it. We couldn't believe allies wanted to join our organization, and they wanted to be a part of it because they were frustrated too. And so we had a thing going, and we went with it. And so Automotive News covered us. We sent them a press release on week 1, and there you are, we're being covered in Automotive News. And now we're on stages on CBT and on Digital Dealer, and diversity in the conversation of DEI was at the forefront. And we became leaders. We became DEI leaders. And as you remember, I didn't want to wave this flag. I wove it somewhat from a gender standpoint, but the race thing I subconsciously kind of avoided because I didn't think our industry was ready for it. And we made a difference. We showed these beautiful faces. These aren't the faces that I ever saw at conferences, right? These aren't the speakers that I saw at conferences. And every time we had a speaker of a different ethnicity, our membership grew. I remember Jody Lai. We didn't have a lot of Asian members at that time. And when she spoke, you saw all the faces on Zoom. Our membership increased. And it reminds me that people need to see themselves. And we should not be upset about Women of Color Automotive Network. We should be upset when we're missing off of those panels, off of those stages, at those conferences. That's where we should be upset. And we made it a point to intentionally pick these speakers so that we can showcase that there is talent, in this industry, and it's diverse talent. They're different faces, different journeys, and that women of color can make it to the top. There will be hurdles, but we can make it to the top. And there you are. Some of you might see your faces, but I think this is one of our first meetings, right? Where we just had, I think the woman on the bottom right is literally reading a magazine. I don't know who that is, but either way, we had some amazing events, and we do it how we want to do it. That's why we play music in the beginning, and it might be hip hop. And I don't want this organization to look like any automotive organization. And I want us to be able to let our hair down, because we have to be a different person in some cases when we go to work. And WOCAN is the place for you to bring your whole entire self. And we didn't think we'd get much pats on the back, but it was an honor at NADA to be recognized by Brian and Glenn Pash for the AWA Awards. It's for a lighthouse in the industry, and a person that has inspired the industry to be better. They've never really given it to a group, and we were the first group to be honored. I gotta say that when they showed the past 10 winners, they were 9 white guys and 1 black guy. And there was a woman that was a part of a partnership, but they didn't have anybody that looked like us. And so it was amazing to change the face of the AWA award. Now, I'm talking about all this amazing stuff, but I gotta say, with success comes hate. That saying, like, the haters are gonna hate, is real. And I want to just bring that to light a little bit. I've never shared this publicly, but this is the note that I received on LinkedIn the day that AutoFi announced that I was joining as their head of marketing. It was from a colleague that I worked with that I liked a lot from my JD Power days. She knew me 20 years when I had just started my career at JD Power. And something about me and my rise pissed her off to the extent that she sent this note to me. And I'll let you kind of read through it, but a couple of highlights. She told me that the truth is they hired you because you are Black. And she said, and I'll just even go a little bit before that, I'll never understand why many Black women and men who are dear friends, she wants to say, she said, what makes you special, right? She told me that I was, you were the girl. the token BS Black girl. And she reminded me that she had it just as hard as me because she grew up on the wrong side of Detroit and nothing was handed to her. And I would like to say that I ignored this note, but I didn't, because I knew her and I liked her. And I have an issue with being a people pleaser. I love to be liked, and it hurt me. It really hurt me. I had to walk out of a meeting in AutoFi and I literally cried in the bathroom. And part of it's because no matter how high I've gotten, how many companies I've gone through, and the success leaves clues, right? I still have this person saying that it's because I'm Black, right? And discrediting my success. But I got over that. It was a couple tears and I got over that. But I want to say that for everybody who writes me this letter, there's plenty of them that think this as well and just aren't writing me it. I must also say that in launching Women of Color Automotive Network, I haven't ever seen so much hate for the speakers that we have every single month, to the point where we have to hide comments now, and we can't allow comments. And I've worked with other women's organizations where I did not see this hate. So you want to talk about race, it is a real thing because there's a lot of ignorance out there. And these are the kind of comments we get. We've been called a communist organization. We've been asked why we focus on color and racial slurs and all of that. And so, once again, we push forward, but I want to just make sure that I acknowledge that this is not easy, that doing something that pushes the envelope makes certain segments of the population really upset. And my comment to them, once again, is instead of being bothered that women of color are getting together, how about you notice when we're missing? Notice when we're missing from your board. Notice when we're missing from your conference agenda. Notice when we are missing instead of when 40 of us get together on a Zoom. The other hurtful part is that a lot of my friends were quiet during this time. People that I had worked with in the industry for a long time weren't willing to speak up, weren't willing to support what I was doing, were upset about me launching WOCAN. I'll just be honest on that. And I have posted this probably at least twice a year because it's my favorite quote from Martin Luther King, that in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies. I'm not going to remember those, what I just showed you on the last couple pages, but the silence of our friends. And that's why we have Sandy and we have the ally program, because you don't understand your power when you are an ally and what you can do to make a difference. And for me, the supporters of WOCAN, I'm in tears sometimes when I think about how they've stepped up to help us. And people like Sandy, who have been there from the beginning, and people on this call. We have men on this call that have been on most of our meetings from the beginning. And that to me is what stands out in terms of, us launching this organization. I like this quote. It's the ones who are against you that believe in your power the most. And even me, someone who is a people pleaser that loves to make people happy, I have to remember that when you are doing something that's transformational, that disrupts what everyone holds dear, they're nervous about you. They understand your power. They feel the movement, and sometimes they are going to hate on you. And we have to take that hate and use it as inspiration, use it to drive us, right? My success is my best revenge. And I smile now at my haters. I smile and I say, look, either jump on the bandwagon or stay off of it. But either way, we're moving forward. So despite the obstacles, I'm still here and I am thriving. And I'm not a big awards person. I think awards are quite political, but I will take Automotive News Top 100 Leading Women, right? I will take that. And that was an honor for me to be recognized with women like Mary Barra, right? And these amazing women in our industry. And also of note is Automotive News Notable Champion of Diversity. I never set out to be a DEI leader. I don't really consider myself one, but to win that award and really along with our founders to be on this journey of impacting our industry in a positive way means so much to me. So I have given you all the dirt today. This is the first time I have talked to this extent, but it feels good. And I want to thank all of you for being here and listening. And I just want to leave you with the advice that I would give to myself. And I want to just remind you that this is a 23-year journey, that success doesn't come overnight and it doesn't come easy. And even when you see someone like me and say, whoa, look, she looks so perfect. Her life looks so perfect. She has a silver spoon in her mouth. Just know there's always these challenges. But I think the advice I would give to myself is that you have to build your network. To me, I didn't focus on that network, at least externally outside of my companies. And really until I joined TrueCar and I had to do it, I had to kind of overcome that hate. And that network has come through for me. I talk about these allies that were in my corner. They weren't in my corner just because I talked to them here and there. They were in my corner because I went to lunch with them. I built deeper relationships with them where they were willing to stand up for me. And so I just want to remind everybody, your network is your net worth. And don't only look for people that are above you. I have friends that could do nothing for me. Maybe they're not as influential, or they're not as well known, but they still guide me, they feed me. And so remember that it's not just above you, it's also below you. It's about how you're giving back as well. Stay on top of your game and execute. I wish that I could just say that you could be average, but you can't. If you're a woman of color, you are going to have to work harder. You're going to have to execute, and you're going to have to stay on top of your game. Remember when I took that job at Edmunds that I didn't know anything about, but I bought that web analytics book? Like, I am in there trying to learn, and I'm constantly like that. Being an SOB, a student of the business, you have never arrived. I have never arrived, and I will never be comfortable with what I know. I always want to learn more, because the boys club can't attack you when you are executing. Be willing to take calculated risk. I add calculated in there because I don't believe in just jumping out of a plane. You got to measure it. But I think as women, we don't take risks enough. We don't put ourselves out there enough. And to me, my career started after 17 years of kind of playing it safe and being around people that made me feel comfortable. All the negative stuff that I talk about was also the risk and the rewards, right? The reward came with those risks that I took. And so be willing to take a risk. Let your haters and detractors fuel you. Don't go on social media and start calling out your haters or doing videos or threatening them to like that's a waste of time. That's a waste of time. Let your success, let your execution, let your impact be your revenge, right? Realize your power. We have so much influence and power and talent that we really just take for granted. I do it for myself as well. I don't realize, like, wow, I have a lot going for myself, and it doesn't always occur to me, but you gotta realize your power. And sometimes that's working with mentors or people outside of you that can help you understand. They can see you from the outside and help you understand what you're good at. You need that sometimes, and absolutely speak up for what matters. I want to caution on that a little bit. It's not that you speak up every single time. It has to be the right time and the right place. And you have to understand the dynamics going on. I see a lot of motivational speakers tell the other women, don't put up with that. Tell them who you are. Okay, you might get fired, and that motivational speaker is not paying your rent or your mortgage, right? So I think we have to be strategic about that. So how did I speak up? Sometimes it was directly speaking up, but sometimes it was going through allies. It was going through that powerful man that I know in the room that I could influence, right? There are other ways to speak up that are not simply me and my own voice. And so just remember to be strategic about how you speak up. I want to thank you so much for listening. I hope you got something out of this. And I love this industry. I love Women of Color Automotive Network. And I just appreciate all of you for being there, for supporting me, for cheering me on. And I'm happy to blaze this trail. And hopefully there won't be just me a decade net from now, 2 decades from now. So thank you so much. Here's my information. Feel free to reach out